Okay. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, January 4th, 2024. It's Kaf Gimel Tevet Hatafshin Pei Dalid. I'm Reva Emunah. We're recording live from Tzfat. And this is part 3 of the new series on Sara Emeinu. We had begun Sara Emeinu before the war broke out. So there's 2 recordings that say Sara Emeinu Part 1 and Sara Emeinu Part 2, but was such a big lapse in time between, so I started again, and I think a lot of new material is included and came up during these classes, so Kedai to go back to Part 1, and we'll say Sara Emeinu Part 1 new series or 2024. So we are basing these classes on the teachings of a man named Harav Nir Manusi. He wrote a sefer in Hebrew, and the name of the sefer is Mizot Olah. Look who is elevating, look who is blossoming, who is unfolding into her true self. Nashim b'Torah al pi Kabbalah ve'Chasidut. Right, women throughout Torah, through the lens of Kabbalah and Hasidut, so the inner mystical, the inner light teachings, the inner secrets around the energy systems, parts of psyche, parts of soul, how to put this all together. Latasham. Okay, so I've shared many times that I have heard that this book is in the process of being translated into English, which is amazing to hear. I don't know when it's going to come out, and I feel that it's really important to spread these teachings and to share these teachings. It helps us, it helps anchor us a lot, to find a place to anchor in everything that's unfolding right now in Am Yisrael, each one of us individually, and as the collective, and in the world right now. And I think it sheds tremendous light on the process, and gives us a lot of hope and a lot of strength, and not false hope, chas v'shalom, but hope really grounded in our Torah and the experiences, the shared experiences of the trustworthy and reliable holy masters, and all of them sharing with us from their direct experiences of elevating and of healing and of transforming. Okay, so again, this is Sara Emeinu Part 3 in the new series. And we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. I'm just going to make a quick bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Elohim melech haolam shehakol nihiya bidbaro. Okay. So, דימוי הגילוף הוא דימוי מרכזי ביותר בתורת הסוד. So we left off yesterday by saying that there was a discussion between Rev Ami and Reish Lakish if Sara Emeinu was created with a womb, but it was blocked off, or it was covered, or it was sealed over, or only later in life did Hashem carve her out and create a space within her, in other words, form a womb for her. And it's really important when we're sharing these Torah to receive that it's not about it's not like a petty discussion. It's not like I'm right and you're wrong, and it's not kind of getting picky uni into the little details to argue about them for like a silly sake, right? Chas v'shalom. It's that each detail is giving us vast amounts of input and information and maps for for our own journey and on our individual and collective. And this is why they're going into like, well, did she have it, but it was covered, or did she not have it? And the it here is a rechem, right? A womb. But it's also talking about, did she have a quality of compassion in her from the get-go? And in other words, she was able to make space for others. She was able to make space for a being that was not her to have a different perspective and a different life view and a different system, right? Or is that only that she was not born with that or created with that? And when she went through this transformation from Sarai really to Yiska and then to Sarah, this was a process of Hashem carving her and teaching her how to become an empty vessel, an open vessel, a humble vessel, how to make space in herself and her time and her life and her finances and her belief system for other, right? How to learn how to feel very deeply and strongly about our own truth and also make space for other, right? So, okay. So he says, this idea of Hashem carving out an empty space or vacating the space is a very central theme in the inner teachings. I think actually, okay. I think we did this yesterday, but it's okay. We'll just pick up. We'll pick up where we really left off. Okay. So let's return now and let's meditate upon and let's contemplate the name changes, right? Sarai to Sarah, Avram to Avraham. קל לראות כיצד רעיון גילוף הרחם של שרי מקביל בדיוק לפעולת הגריעה שהפכה אותו משרי לשרה. Okay, so it seems easier to make the parallel that Sarai began as Sarai, right? Sin Reish Yud, and Hashem carved out something within her, right? And in other words, like Hashem carved a hay into her, and then like took away hay, right? And we can understand that even visually, like, you know, it was a seed and Hashem like kind of split the seed and left like almost like half of it there and removed the other half of it. לפנינו שני תיאורים של אותו רעיון בסיסי. So before us, we have two sort of examples based on the same principle or the same idea. על מנת להתפתח, הייתה צריכה שרי להשיל דבר מה שאחזה בו, לפתוח חלל בתוכה. Says, okay, so, hi, honey, this is so fun. So, Sarai, and let me open the chat in case you need to write or someone else needs to write. Okay, so we said, so we're understanding that Sarai, right, she had to release something, right, open something. She had to open an empty space, create an empty space inside of her, allow herself in some way to be carved out. Okay. Hello. אכן, סיומת ההי המאפיינת את מרבית שמות הנשים משווה לשם שרה נופח נשי נעדר מהשם שרי. Okay, so we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, that in Torah, in Jewish names, often a woman's name will end with a hey, and because it's connected to breath, to speech, to birthing, to something coming into an empty space, developing there, and then being born or manifest or birthed or spoken or sung, right? So that, you know, it's very, very common for women's names, not all women's names, It's very common for women's names in Judaism to end in a hey. And it allows us to know that the name is a feminine name, kilu, right? Meaning we're saying energetically. Okay. So, but now what about the transformation, the name change from Avram to Avraham? If we're going to say that Avraham Avinu had both reproductive organs, both masculine and feminine, but they were somehow sealed off, like up closed inside of him. Gilui zehuto zichruto naase af hu derech hatziva ugriya. Then revealing his masculinity is also going to be, it's going to show up in a similar process. Like carving something out, really taking something from something. Tsur chutzvatam. אך הרעיון שלפיו המעבר מאברהם לאברהם כרוך בהוספת אות. But this seems a little counterintuitive because with Sarah, we have the image and we understand that she had a yud and Hashem carved one hay out and removed it and gave it to Avraham and left her with another hay, which is sort of this open, empty space. But how are we to understand that when we're saying with Avraham Avinu that a hay was added to him? Why are we saying, how could we understand it that something was carved out from him if we're saying he got an extra letter, he got another hay? לא בהכשרתה מאפשר לנו לדייק עוד יותר בתהליך שעבר. So now this is going to enable us to explore really what was the process that the masculine, that Avraham went through. טומאתו של אברהם לא התבטאה בצורת כיסוי על גבי זכרותו, אלא בצורת היעדרה מלכתחילה כביכול. Okay, so now he's going back and he's saying, when we speak about Avraham Avinu and, right, we spoke yesterday, that there's beings that have both of the reproductive organs on the outside, and there's beings that have both of the reproductive organs but hidden and covered over and hidden on the inside. And there's some creatures, some beings that don't have any reproductive organs. Okay, and so this is the discussion. Did Avram and Sarah have reproductive organs, but they were hidden or sealed off and not accessible to them? Or did they not have them and then Hashem later created them? Right? Like it was something later that was added on to them. So it says, in the case of Avraham, it wasn't that his masculinity was there, but it was covered over. In his case, it was actually to create here, okay, one second, let's hear it in the Hebrew. So he's wanting to bring us in very deeply, even in a kinesthetic, somatic body experience of what the feminine experiences in her growth to consciousness and what the masculine experiences in his growth to consciousness. Also understanding that we all contain both masculine and feminine within us. So we're going to experience this too. And like our inner masculine is going to experience this and our inner feminine is going to experience. So he's saying like this, on the side of the feminine, a kivyachol, it's seemingly that the feminine needs to go through a process where she loses something and she has to give up something. Avraham haya tzarich lirchosh mashu chadash, and the masculine needed to receive something new. Okay, again, this is it's a very deep overgeneralization, but it's important because it's the Holy Masters are wanting to set a stage for us and give us like a map. And the map is that in this process of growing higher consciousness, it seems that the feminine loses something and offers something, releases something, lets go of something, and the masculine receives something new and becomes something new. הזוג היהודי הראשון כמו החל את דרכו כשתי בובות ילדים נוטלות עברי רבייה והבשיל על בגרותו בשני תהליכים הפוכים. So he says it's almost like we can imagine like baby dolls that are created for children and they're created sexless. Like when you look at the bottom part of a baby doll, right? Even Barbies and Kens have this, right? If you look at the bottom part of the doll, there's no sex organs, like defining that this is a girl Barbie or a boy Barbie. So he said, it seems like even Adam and Chava might have been that, but that Abraham and Sarah were that in the beginning. And they both had to go through a maturing process, a transformative experience, a journey that would change them into beings that have reproductive organs and can use them in conscious ways. In other words, to becoming creators and co-creators with the creator of the universe and with one another. הוספת איבר במקרה שלו, גריעת איבר במקרה שלה, right? He's receiving an organ and she is opening and becoming a vessel, right? She's being carved out and something is being added onto him. שני תהליכים המקבילים בדיוק לשתי שיטות הפיסול והבסיסיות באומנות. He says this exactly parallels two tactics that we use in sculpture, right? There's two ways of sculpting something, right? One is to press in and remove the clay or remove the marble, right? And one is to like, build a nose and then put it on the bust of the head that you're building, right? So those are two different ways of like shaping, let's say a face, let's say like a bust that's made from clay, right? One is that you can carve out and remove clay, and one is you can form something and add it on to the clay, okay? Hope that was clear. B'ni'at dmut derech hosefet chomer, you can build form by adding matter. Le'umat chashifat dmut derech sitot och giluf, or you can reveal a form by removing matter. You understand what I mean by that? Again, in the image of clay or like sculpting, right? There's two ways to reveal the form. You can carve out something and then you reveal the form, like again, let's say like a big block of marble, and then Michelangelo is carving into, or which is removing something, or is like in pisul, like in sculpture and sculpting, is making something and then attaching it to the form that's already there. Okay, good. גבריות נרחשת, נשיות מתגלה. Okay. מה המשמעות של כל זה? So he's saying, yes, this is very interesting, but what's the practical application for us in our lives and in as students of Kabbalah and Hasidut, right? Why is it important to know that these two different manners of transformation and of becoming something new? על מנת להבין את הדברים באופן פנימי, in order to really understand these things in a deep way, Aleinu lalechet me'ever lemashmu'utam hapshuta. We need to go beyond this kind of a cursory reading and a simple understanding. V'latur achar hanimshal haruchani shalem, and really seek to connect to the spiritual parallelisms, right? What is this teaching us also about the spiritual journey and the journey of consciousness? B'mikra shalanu, so in our case, hadavar hechrachi, it's really important. It's really mandatory even. B'sha'at shinui hashemot, at the time of the changing of their names, and now we just want to remember that they're not the only ones that change their names. And here we are in Parashat Shmot, in Chumash Shmot, right? In Hashgacha Pratis, we're in the Torah portion of Shmot, which gets translated in English as Exodus, but because it's the Exodus story, but the literal translation of the word Shemot is Shemot, or the plural of the word names. Okay, so we're very concerned and curious and open to learning all about names, not only in the general, in the whole Sefer Shmot, in the book of names, but we happen to be in the Parsha that's called Shmot, or names, in the Chumash, or in the Bible book Exodus, or also in Hebrew, it means names. Okay, so we're in the names, Sheba names. So names are really fascinating us and interesting to us. So, you know, we're going to see like lots of different name changes. So the first one is, right, Sarai and Avram to Sarah and Avraham, although again, it seems to be that even before that, she went by another name, Yiska, right? And of course, you know, Yaakov and Yisrael, he has a name change, and he seems to sometimes be referred to as Yaakov even after he changes to Yisrael, and sometimes he's referred to Yisrael, right? And we're going to notice, right, similar, right, Yeshua is going to have a name change, and many people don't know this, but Moshe Rabbeinu himself has many, 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 many names. And Yitro has many names, and also name changes, and all kinds of inyanim around changing names. Okay, so, and by changing a name, right, the Chazal, the Holy Masters, tell us it's part of being open to being a new being, a new person, to a new beginning in our life, to a new path, to getting freed from old patterns, to changing the mazal, or our life direction and the flow of our consciousness. So these are very powerful subjects and ideas. So it said, B'sha'at shinui hashemot haya Avraham kvar yeled. So it's interesting to notice that, again, when the feminine had the name change, when Sarai went to Sarah, she still did not have children. She still had not conceived and born a child. However, on the masculine side, when Avram goes to Avraham, he's already a father, right? Ishmael was already born. He's already brought a child into the world, albeit not after he was circumcised, right? Not after the Brit Milah. And the name of the child that was already born to him was, of course, Yishmael. Kach shabiru, kach shabaru shabniat zichuto lo haita b'mishur hafizi. So it says that the first thing that we want to bear in mind here, as we're exploring the structure, right, energetically and of consciousness, is that Avraham already had Yishmael at the time of this name change. And so we're meant to understand that whatever process he's going through here, it's not a physical process. In other words, obviously, he must have already had a reproductive organ that was functioning, because he's already been part of conceiving Yishmael, right, together with Hagar, right? So he's already a father. So clearly, whatever is happening, we're not talking about that it's happening on a physical level for Avraham. מצבים הטומטמי הראשוני של אברהם ושרי מסמל מצב שבו הן גבריותו והן נשיותה אינן ממומשות באופן מתוקן. So the holy masters are saying, really, what the Torah, what Hashem is teaching us here is it's less about the physical structure of Avram and Sarai and more about that their masculine consciousness in the case of Avram and their feminine consciousness in the case of Sarai were very primitive and underdeveloped and at a very young and undeveloped state of consciousness. Like, what is it to be in your feminine and what is it to be in your masculine? What is it to be a giver? What is it to be a receiver? Right? Those experiences and those levels of refinement and clarification, whitening, refinement, as the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe would teach, right, were in very early stages of development, and they were not what we call metukan, right? They were not in an sort of badly translated, I'm sorry, but as fixed, right? By metukan, we mean really working to full capacity, allowing the fullest, most beautiful potential of each energy to manifest and to connect. Okay. אחד המשלים היסודיים בחסידות לתיאור היחס בין הזכרי והנקבי הוא הדימויים של חותם בולט וחותם שוקע. It says, okay, so one of the images that we use in Chassidut, right, in the inner teachings and the late teachings, to express these ideas is that the difference between a masculine energy and a feminine energy is that one is like a raised imprinting. Imprinting, it causes something to stand out, and one is to be imprinted upon. Okay, again, imagine again that you're working with very warm, soft wax. And so if you would take your thumb and push it into the very warm, soft wax, you would see that your thumb carved out the little prints that are upon your thumb. And we would understand that to be a feminine imprintation, what we might call chotem shokea, right? That a little valleys have been carved out in the warm wax because you pushed your thumb into it. Now it's made space, right? It's been carved out, and we call that a chotem shokea. Okay, and then we have another way of imprinting something, and that's called a chotem bolet. And a chotem bolet, let me see if I could think of a good mashal for it. Yes, I can. Okay, so you know how like on the Luchot Habrit, on the tablets of sapphire, which gets not so well, right, not translated to the 10 Commandments, but really means the Luchot Edut, or the tablets of witnessing, tablets of testimony, right? So we have this idea that on one side, it was chokek, so it was imprinted, but on the other side, those same letters popped out. So they were raised off of the base of sapphire. So they were raised letters, okay? And that's called a chotem bolet. Chotem bolet hu ha-chotem atzmo, right? So it says chotem bolet, like the raised letters, right? It's when it's the material itself is almost being like stretched and opened And we're not removing anything from the material. Okay, we're raising parts of the material. הבא להשפיע ולהטביע את רצונו על המציאות. And in doing so, it changes the form, right? Like again, let's say we have a beautiful warm ball of wax and we push our thumb in, okay? Well, on the other side, now something's going to be bolet. There's going to be like a shape popping out from the warm wax in the shape of your thumb, and that's bolet, right? It's popping out. So we say, so that form that's popping out, it's popping out because it's habala hashpia ulehatbia et retzono ala metziut. It's influencing the wax. In other words, it's putting you can it's forming the wax. It's it's the best I can give right now. It's acting upon reality. How's that? It's acting upon reality. V'chotem shokea, and then we have something called an imprint, right? We have this word in English, an imprint. And that's when we have the warm wax and we put our thumbprint and we take out our thumb and we can see where our thumbprint carved out the little swirls. And that's called an imprint, right? So an imprint, who hasha'ava hamekabelet mimeno et tashlil tzuato. Again, he's using, that's the wax, right? Or the warm wax that's being imprinted upon. So one is imprinting and one is being imprinted upon. Hope this is clear so far. Okay. One is imprinting, it's acting upon the material, right? Like putting your thumb into the warm ball of wax and comes out the other side, a blita, like a bloop in the shape of a thumb. So now the wax has been acted upon, or putting your thumb into the warm wax and you can see the little rivulets of your thumbprint, and the material has been acted upon and it's reflecting the imprint left upon it. Okay, any questions so far? Because it's just going to build from here. Really important. Okay, good. Okay. So if these two sort of dances and these two energies and these two processes come together, meet one another, right? In a good way, notzar chibur b'neihem, then there's a natural, an organic, and maybe even beautiful connection between them. But if for any reason, hachotem shechok or hasha'ava kasha, or shnehem gam yachad, he says, but what if there's resistance? Like, what if the material, what if it's not this yummy warm wax? What if it's rigid and it's cold and then it can't be acted upon, right? In other words, there's no possibility to form or change or bring anything new in it. Or what if yeah, that's just a good example. Okay, he says, or both, right? What if there's rigidity happening here? What if the wax isn't warm or the force is not strong enough to impact it, or both? Hamifgash hapore b'neihem eino mitafsher. Then it's not, the meeting between them isn't going to result really in the result that we were after, right? Where one is leaving an imprint and one is being imprinted upon, right? And that somehow they're building something beautiful and artistic and lovely together. That's not going to happen. It's not going to have a possibility for it to happen. החותם הבולט מסמל כמובן את הזכר והחותם השקוע את הנוקבה. Okay, so if you haven't caught it already, he's saying, right, there's a way of, there's an act of imprinting something that's masculine, and there's a receptive act of being imprinted upon, and that's the feminine. Okay, so just asking if there's any questions so far. just in case it wasn't clear. Okay. הרעיון לפיו השם שרי מאופיין בחלק עודף בעוד בשם אברהם חסר משהו. So when we first meet Avram and Sarai, right? It almost seems like they've switched places because we said again that the masculine is when like there's something popping out of the wax, right? That there's something added on, it's adding something, and the imprint is it's received an impression upon it, and it's made space in itself to be acted upon. And yet, when we first meet Sarai and Avram, we get the impression that she has the masculine and he has the feminine. How do we get this impression? It says, well, Sarai, it sounds like, because she has the yud at the end, that she is the one like holding the seed, right? She's the one that has something extra added to her, right? She's got an extra part. Be'od b'shem Avram chaser mashu. And in the name of Avram, it seems that he's missing something, right? That she has something extra and he's missing something. She got twice as much of something and he didn't even get any of it, whatever this it is. Okay, so far. Melamed otanu, so this is teaching us, ki lifnei shinui hashemot, before their name change, lo bit'u bnei hazug et tafkidim hanachon. They didn't know how to work with their natural gifts. What is the natural energy called masculine? What is the natural energy called feminine? How is it designed? What are the conditions that it thrives under? What are the conditions that it shuts down under? Right? They didn't know any of this. So like they were trying to work the system without ever having read the instructor's instruction manual, right? And so they weren't getting optimum joy out of the system because they didn't know the system or understand again how to run their own systems and how to connect their systems in a way that leads to optimum light, optimum joy. Avram lo haya מספיק חותם בולט, אלא היה שקוע בעצמו באופן מסוים. It says, so they began with what like an energy imbalance or challenge. And so in Abraham's case, he was too inward. He was too closed off. All of his potential was lying in wait, but very, very deep inside of him, and not knowing how to express that or share that or connect. So it says on the side of the masculine, and in this case, the masculine as Avram, right? It says what he didn't know how to do was this bolet, this chotem bolet, make an impression, act upon consciousness, act upon his surroundings, act upon himself, like even have inner self leadership. He didn't know how to act upon reality and consciousness to help it, to soothe it, to comfort it, to elevate it, right? He didn't know how to do that. Because he was very shut down inside and sunk within his own being. באופן מסוים, in a certain way. ואילו שרי לא הייתה מספיק חותם שוקע, אלא בלטה החוצה בצורה שלילית מסוימת. And in Sarai's case, she was closed off to receiving. She was closed off to being acted upon, to allowing herself to be influenced by his influence, right? Um, 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 okay, again, I think that's the best we can say it for right now, right? So again, he was closed to giving and she was closed to receiving. That's really where we're beginning here. And more than that, she seemed to be connected with her ability to give, and he seems to be connected maybe in his ability to receive. But what's missing in both of they're both missing a piece. And in the case of Sarai, the feminine is lacking the ability to take in someone else's opinion, someone else's presence, someone else's perspective, someone else's ideas, right? Because the goal is collaboration, right? The goal is collaboration. So that's a very new project in the world. Like every creature really, mostly really, it's a dog eat dog world, right? Like is concerned with their own survival. So it's already a leap in consciousness when there's communities like, ants or even cells, right? Even the human body that agrees to collaborate harmoniously, both for their own survival and also for the highest good of the whole organism, right? So Adam and Chava, and then Sarai and Avram, right? What they didn't really know yet, this deepest secret of collaboration. They were trying, right? But to collaborate and maximize their gifts and their best qualities, like the masculine maximizing the gift of masculine energy and the feminine maximizing the gifts of the feminine energy. They didn't yet know how to do that. Shinui hashemot izen et hadvarim. So but we spoke yesterday about the name change, right? And that we said in the end, the gematria of Avram and Sarai is 753, which is exactly the same gematria of Avraham and Sarah, also 753. So we asked yesterday, so what was accomplished by the name change? And we said the redistribution of the energies. One received more energy to give, and one received a space with which to receive. Avraham received more light and consciousness and energy and ability, and more ability to become a channel for giving. And Sarai became Sarah and became more able to trust receiving and letting other in, and being acted upon in a good way, right? And what goes with that again is a certain level of trust and a certain level of humbleness and a certain level of releasing control, right? That it's not going to be exactly my way or the way I want it, because I'm allowing being acted upon, right? Like that warm wax. So this is where both of them are at. Okay. שינוי השמות איזן את הדברים. אצל אברהם הוא בנה קומה נוספת על גבי מבנה האישיות הקיים. So what's happening in this process is that Avraham is building a new level of consciousness built upon the foundation of his previous consciousness, right? ולשרה הוא סיוע לשמוט את מה שכיסה את נשיותה. And in the process of Sarah, or the feminine, it's to uncover and reveal something that was there but was covered over, right? Like to be atum, to be closed off. And so we might even say that both of them are undergoing some type of an opening, and Avraham is opening to let something out and be a giver, and Sarai is opening to receiving. Like very similar to how it is in biology and physiologically, right? That meaning that's an outer expression of also the spiritual process. Okay. תהליכים אלו נושאים בחובם רעיון עמוק לגבי הדרכים השונות. It says, okay, so these processes and these journeys and are really teaching us the principles, these very deep principles and ideas with regards to the different paths of the masculine and the feminine. שבהן מתפתחות גבריות ונשיות, right? There's a process that the masculine develops into highest masculine and most integrated masculine. And there's a process that the feminine develops into highest feminine and most integrated feminine, and they're different. או ליתר דיוק, גבריות ונשיות לפי היהדות. And maybe more specifically, even the definition of masculinity and femininity as it's taught through Torah, right? That it's a very exact energy frequency. It's a very, not exact in the sense of being frozen or labeled. That's not what we mean at all. We're saying the energy qualities of masculine and the energy qualities of feminine. שהרי אברהם ושרה היו היהודים הראשונים, because Abraham and Sarah were the first Jews in the world, right? By Jew, again, we're talking about, sometimes we're called Yehudi, which is one energy frequency more connected to Hod. And sometimes we're called Ivrim, which is another energy, which is Hebrews, which is the ones that cross over, right? Ma'avarim. And we're also called Yisrael, right? Israel or Israelis, right? Which is the energy center of the heart center. Okay, these are all different expressions, but here we're talking about that there's some type of a being in the world that has a particular energy field and a particular energy frequency and a particular effect on their own energies and on holding and receiving God's energies and on channeling God's energies. And that system is called a Yehudi, a Jew. And Avraham and Sarah are the first ones to have this energy makeup and energy system. Lo ha'anashim harishonim, they were not the first human beings. They were the first Jews. That's a very big difference, right? There's collective systems, and then there's systems that get more specific in their details of what they're designed for. Gavriut, so this is talking about the masculine principle, ole mehem, hi be'ikara tchuna nircheshet shetzarich livnot ota. Okay, so we're just weaving again and again and again, trying to learn these new concepts and ideas that the masculine seems to be something that is added. It's an addition. It's adding something. It's receiving something, and that he then needs to build. היא לא נמצאת בתוך הגבר ומחכה שיגלה אותו. It's not a potential that already lies inside of him and needs to be revealed. That's as it is in the feminine case. ולא מתפתחת באופן טבעי. And this higher masculine, it doesn't open automatically. It needs to apparently to be he needs to receive something and be almost like activated, right? Again, this is very new for us, so we're just taking it in. Okay, so we'll just review that again, that this masculine, the masculine principle, it's not inside of the masculine and waiting to be revealed, and it doesn't organically open and grow. Gavriut kshura behitbagrut. Gavriut, for the word gever, or the masculine, is intimately connected with the Hebrew word hit gabrut, to mature, right? But also to overcome, also to grow into one's strength, also to access one's strength, also yeah, I think that's a good beginning. So the deeper meaning of this is she'al hagever latzet me'atzmo, that his direction of growth, the masculine's direction of growth, is movement away from himself, out of himself, right? Like a giving, right? The energy is a movement of giving. Hi, honey. So his fixing and I want to really say, I can't stress this enough. And I also ask Hashem that I don't be misquoted, because it's all too easy with these teachings for people to misunderstand them and quote them out of context. And I'm very aware of that. So may Hashem protect all of us. But I think it's important to point out that women often think that by giving more to men, trying harder and giving more, like doing more for him, it will help him to heal, and it will help him to, let's say, let love in, right? And feel loved. But the thing is, their tikkun is not to let love in. That's not their tikkun. Their tikkun is to give love. And it's not that it doesn't flow both ways. And yes, we all have masculine and feminine. We're obviously right now we're talking about it in an artificial laboratory where we're separating masculine and feminine. Okay, but we're doing that for a reason, so we can really get a sense of the essence of their energies and the way Hashem designed them. And of course, it's non-binary, because we're all made from both masculine and feminine, and we're working with those parts. We're making it binary right now so that we can really get a sense of these energies, ki'ilu they existed in a pure vacuum, right? Okay, so he says, it's very important for us to understand. And this is also going to explain, for example, why the holy masters would mostly speak about God in the masculine. Not God doesn't have a sex, of course. God is not male or female. But again, also because we don't yet really have the right language. But it's trying to convey, when we talk about God in the masculine, it's conveying God as we're experiencing an energy acting upon us, giving to us, guiding us, filling us, giving us life force, animating us, right? So the experience is that we're receiving, we're being acted upon, we're being given to from a higher source, we're being formed by something above our consciousness. That's why we refer to God in those cases as in the masculine. And when we want to convey the experience, let's say, of God receiving us, then we would maybe call that the Shekhinah, right? When we're experiencing God receiving our prayer, for example, receiving our presence, right? Then we would maybe call God then Shrinta or Shrina or Matronita. They're different names, right? But a feminine name for Hashem. Even Elohim is a feminine name for Hashem, the one who receives all the parts. Okay. ומשמעות הדבר שעל הגבר לצאת מעצמו, ללכת נגד עצמו ולכבוש במעשה או בדיבור. He says again, he's wanting us to really understand the masculine nature, that this is what it needs to feel in its optimum best. So number one, it needs to go out of itself. Number two, it needs to conquer territory, right? It needs to influence something. It needs to leave its mark on something. Whether in action or in speech, it needs to know that its doing is benefiting another. That's how a man feels, or the masculine feels. It's operating in its optimum design, okay? That it goes out of itself and it impacts other. It goes out of self, and again, it can conquer, it can win over, it can influence, it can benefit another by giving to it, and it can give to it not just stuff, but it can say kind words, right? Okay. Okay, to connect with that which is outside of him and himself, and to impact that which is outside of him, right? Okay, this is again, he's saying this is the nature of the masculine, and when it's in tikkun, right? This is what helps the masculine. This is what when the masculine is in its most healthy, this is what it will look like. That it needs to go out from itself and impact other and benefit other and elevate other and give of himself, right? In a way, again, that leaves a lasting impact. זו הסיבה שכדי להגיע מאברהם לאברהם יש להוסיף אות. This is the reason why for him to go from Avram to Avraham, he has to have a hey added to his name, right? Something has to open within him, to not open to receive, but that he's more expansive in his vision. He's more expansive. Who can I give to? Who can I help? Right? Livnot koma nosefet al gabe hakoma hativ'it, to open himself to becoming bigger than his consciousness was previously. L'umat zot, but now on the other side, when we're going to speak about the feminine, neshi'ut hi tchuna tiv'it shetzarich legalot ota. The uncovering of feminine consciousness is a very inwards organic process. And it's it's a continuous process of like a flower blossoming and opening and revealing something that's always been there. Okay? Revealing, opening to and becoming. It's the process of becoming. Okay, whereas we might say the masculine is more a process of doing, and the feminine is more a process of being. The masculine is more of a process of acting upon, and the feminine is more of a process of accepting and allowing and becoming, right? Okay. And it's very important because he stresses to us here to remember that the feminine unfolding is an organic process, and it's a process of opening and revealing what's always been there. Haneshiut mistateret betoch ha'isha, her femininity is already hidden, it already exists within her. Kefi הפסל מסתתר בתוך אבן השיש ומחכה שיחפשו אותו. And he says again, like, like Michelangelo, a master sculptor, looked at this beautiful piece of marble and saw the David already inside of it, right? It already existed. And it was a question of shedding all that was not the David to reveal the David that was already there inside of it. That's a feminine process, right? Shedding that which is not David to reveal that the David was all in the marble all along. It was always there. Okay. And is waiting to be discovered. היא לא מתגלה מתוך התגברות והתאמצות, אלא בדיוק להפך. So the feminine nature does not open in the face of being of conquering and overpowering. It's the energy is exactly the opposite. מתוך הרפיה ושמיטה של מטענים miyutarim, but it's a process of release and shedding, right? Release, opening and releasing and surrendering and shedding, right? That's very feminine. Okay. Lechen, and therefore, כדי להגיע משרי לשרה, in order for her to go through the transformation from Sarai to Sarah, לא צריך להוסיף עוד. It wasn't necessary for her to receive another letter, אלא להפחית מאות קיימת, to shed, right, part of the you that she already had, right? להתקלף, it's such a beautiful image, but it's like an orange with an orange peel. And to reveal the orange, you don't have to now create an orange. You peel the orange, and when you remove the peel, the orange is already there. להתקלף משכבות חיצוניות, to shed false self, to shed the outer layers, right? And again, we gave the example of Michelangelo and the David. פירוש זה, so this explanation, מסביר בבת אחת, explains in one shot, מספר דברים, several different spiritual principles. ראשית, okay, so first of all, הוא מבאר בצורה יפהפייה את ההבדל בין האופנים. So first of all, it beautifully explains the difference, right, between בין האופנים שבהם הוענקו לאברהם ושרה שמותיהם החדשים. It beautifully explains the process that they both went through in receiving their new names. That Avram went through a process of allowing himself to be built and receive something new, and Sarai went through a process of shedding. Avram went through a process of opening to become a giver, and Sarai went through a process of opening to being given to receiving. Kezachur, as the masculine, bizman shehashem Avraham hu anak b'milim v'haya shmecha Avraham al Hashem. Okay, so it says, okay, al Hashem Sarah ne'emar rak ki Sarah shma. Okay, so when it's talking about the masculine and it's talking about Avraham, at the same time that he's given this new name, Avraham, the additional words there are, and your name is from now on, Veheye Shmecha Avraham. Now your name is Avraham. Al Hashem Sarah, but when it comes to Sarah getting her name changed, Ne'emar, it says, it only says, Ki Sarah Shma, that because Sarah is her name. You understand? again, we'll say it again. With Avraham, the grammar is Veheye Shmecha Avraham, and your name will be Avraham. And on Sarai, it says Sarah is her name. Hasiba, the reason for this, mitbarer, becomes clear. He shebe'od Avraham hu shem chadash, that Avraham is a new name. Sarah haya kalul besarai me'az me'olam, ki Sarah kvar shma. Okay, so in other words, the Holy Masters are teaching us Avram becomes a Bria Hadasha, something new that never existed. He becomes Avraham with the addition of the Hey, something new. Whereas Sarai, she always contained within her the name Sarah, and she went through a process where the Hey was like peeled off of her, and it was revealed that all along that Sarah existed within her. It was always there. Right? So one is a process of building and adding something new, and what is a process of shedding and opening to something that was always there. Davar Sheni, the second spiritual principle, is haperush mitkasher le'uvda shelefi hayahadut kol gever chayav bibrit milah. So he says like this. And this explanation is connected to that according to Judaism, right, in Yahadut, every man is it's incumbent upon him to have a brit milah, right, to a circumcision. Be'od ha'isha hi keman demihela dame, that a woman is whole already in the way that she's created. Okay, again, there's an activation process for a man, and that activation process begins in the moment of his brit milah, where a woman she doesn't have to be activated upon. She's going to go the other way. She's going to she's already whole in herself, and it's a process of opening. Domel lemishnolad nimul. And there's several instances in Torah where the Torah tells us of certain men that were born already circumcised. Moshe Rabbeinu was one of them. And this is again, it's a spiritual state that the person is, there's already, like, they already come into the world without certain energy blocks and klipot. Hagever chayav bibrit milah. So a man needs a brit milah, a circumcision. Mikevan shebniat hagabriut krucha bepu'ulot shinui aktivit, because the masculine principle acts upon changing a certain object. It's an energy that change happens by one body acting upon another body and change, like almost like not in a bad way, but forcing change upon it, right? That's a masculine principle, to act upon something. We said, like, right, pushing your thumb into warm wax. So the masculine would be, right, the thumb, and the like pushing it into the wax, and the feminine would be to receive the imprint, to be acted upon. Ha'isha le'umat zot, so the feminine, on the other hand, the woman, on the other hand, p'tura mikach, does not need to be circumcised. Mikevan, because shegilui haneshiut, the revelation of her femininity and her feminine quality and energy, eino karuch b'shinui ele bekabalat isha kamut shehi, that her her becoming, right? Her becoming in terms of her full femininity is not because it's not about changing something. It's about accepting, surrendering, receiving all that is, the way that it is. בחשיפת הנשיאות הטבעית שלה, learning to be in flow and be her natural, like organic feminine self. I know these are a little hard, these concepts, because they're new to us. Okay. So for right now, we're just letting it in. We're being very feminine. Okay. Lebasof. So to end off, not really, he's just ending off the paragraph. We're continuing. Haperush shofech ol. So this explanation sheds light al hanusachim ushonim shel birkat hashachar ligvarim v'nashim, on the, in the morning prayers, when a woman, a man says terribly, it really disturbs our system, right? A man makes a bracha on not making me a woman, and a woman makes a bracha on making me in accordance with your will. So he says, well, now we might have a deeper and less triggered response to those blessings. Baruch shelo asani isha, I bless you, Hashem, that you have not formed me as a woman. Leumat baruch asani kirtsono, as opposed to what women say, right? We bless the Creator who has formed me in accordance with your will. מכיוון שהגבריות היא תכונה נרכשת, הגבר אינו מברך על כך שהשם עשה אותו גבר. It says, because the masculine principle is active, and it's about acting upon and active change, and imprinting upon, the man doesn't say his bracha in the passive, he says it in the active, right? That you didn't form me like this. Elerak shelo asa oto isha, mikan ve'elecha haheficha legever tluya bo, ve'avodah sheyaseh. So we learn from here that the masculine principle is about doing, and about impacting, and about creating change and creating. Nishiuta shela isha, and the femininity of the woman, the umat zot, on the other hand, kvar tmunaba, it already exists within her. It's not something new. It's already imprinted in her. It's already an organic part of her own development and unfolding. Gam im aliyah la'avod k'dei legalota, gam im aleha la'avod k'dei legalota, even if, yes, it is part of our spiritual process and path, to work to reveal ourselves and to reveal our higher selves, to reveal Malchut. Lechen hi mevarechet et Hashem al kach she'asa ota kirtzono. So she says the bracha that I bless you, Creator, that you've already created me in alignment with your deepest will. Mevi'ah bechach, and she's expressing through this et hatfilah, the really inside deep prayer, shetizke lehargish zot, that she should feel that I'm already whole, I'm already okay, I'm already complete. The process is for me to more and more let that in, right? I'm already beautiful. And the work is to let that in, that's the work, not to try harder to keep changing myself, right? Now, again, these are very, very subtle things that can be taken out of context and misquoted, So B'ezrat Hashem will be able to receive them in a way that brings us healing and integration, right? But that's such a beautiful line that he's saying, right? Our work as women is to let in the light, is to let in the goodness, is to believe in the goodness, is to trust the goodness, is to know that it's always been there and it is there right now. And the process is a shedding, it's a peeling. It's not having to build something yesh me'ayin from nothing. Okay, I'm just checking the chat box before we continue. Can we go over the Yiska Sarai Salah transformation, giving and receiving? Yes, but not yet. Okay.
It could also be, Reva, that you already did it, and because I'm coming in late, that like you can say listen to the recording and it's okay.
Well, it's not on this recording, to be fair. But he's gonna talk about it as we keep going.
Okay.
So I would rather, because my vision, if Hashem blesses us, is I would so love to finish Sarah by Erev Shabbos, because it's just so vital. And then we have, Rivka and Rachel and Leah and Dina and Tamal and the Bnot Tzlofchad, and right. And so, because of the war, and many other things, I had stopped, and now I want to keep the flow going if we can. So hopefully it's going to come out in his teachings, I believe. Okay. Hifuch tafkidim. Okay, so he continues. Ka'et, okay, so now, anu yacholim lahavin, maybe we can understand ma haya ba'ayati kol kach, what was so problematic, behitmodedut im herayon Hagar, around Hagar's pregnancy, around Hagar conceiving so quickly, and the whole time of her pregnancy. Okay. Chadlunu shel Avraham hit ra'amuta shel Sarah תגובתו המתנערת והמוציא הנואש שהיא מוצאת. Right? So he says, like, because, wow, this is such a hard story, right? Sarah is the one who asks Abraham and suggests that he take Hagar, and then she gets pregnant so quickly, and then Sarah seems very upset, and then Sarah comes and says, like, you only prayed for yourself, and you didn't think about me in this process, so your prayer was answered, and you are going to have kids, but with Hagar and not me. And that wasn't what I had in mind, and that wasn't the plan. Because part of the plan is to teach you to be more sensitive to the feminine and a giver. And instead you left me out and you forgot about me, and you were only thinking about yourself, that you would get children, but what about me? Right? And they're telling him that God will judge between me and you, right? All of this story, we want to understand it in a deeper way, and right, what was happening and the energy of each one, and what was it fixing, what was it breaking, what was it fixing? Okay, the whole elu yesh subtext hakashur b'tivan shel gavriuto v'shel nishiuta. Right, and he says we want to learn this piece of the parsha now, really understanding the subtext of what was happening in his masculine and what was happening in her feminine, and what we mean by that, because they are our spiritual parents, is right what was happening in almost like the archetype of the masculine energy and the archetype of the feminine energy, husband and wife, right? Okay. So he continues. Madua lo hitpalel Avraham al Sarah ele rak al asmo. Why did Avraham only pray for himself to have children, but didn't include Sarah in his prayers? That's one question. Madua kaasher ra'a et hazilzul shebo noheget ba shifrata. Why, when he saw the diminishment that was happening to his wife through her maidservant, lo yatsa lehagen al kvoda, did he not go out and protect her honor? Okay, these are really deep and beautiful questions. Madua piteret ishto be hine shifratech beyadech asila hatod be'enech. Why did he distance himself from her suffering, telling her this essentially in the language of the singular feminine, right? Here's your maidservant in your hands. Do with her what you see fit in your eyes. That's very distancing, right? Hatshuvahi. So the answer is Shehu Haya Adain Avram, that he was still in the consciousness of Avram. Haser ot, missing something, missing this letter Hey, without this letter Hey. Mibchinat chotem shokea, it was inverse, right? He was like he himself was the imprinted one, right? Like with a desire to receive, in other words, carved out from him, a desire to receive. Yachasit lemi uma shehu noad lihiyot. Sunken into, right? Closed off from, disconnected from what and who he was designed to be. Okay? Tifkudo bezugiut, his design, his purpose in relationshiping, and particularly relationshiping in masculine and feminine, ofyan bechoser nochachut, bekach shelo mileh k'ra'ui et tafkido k'gever. It's showing that what's missing when he's in the state of Avram is his ability to be present and show up in the way that he was designed to show up. Okay? Beoto ofen, and in the same way, in the same manner, we could also ask about what's happening on the side of the feminine. Madua Sara hilo shene'elza liyizum et havtachat hameshech hashoshelet be'emtsaut hagar. Okay, so we can say on the side of Sarah, why was she the one in the first place to suggest that Avraham take Hagar? Wasn't she endangering her marriage? Wasn't she not protecting her own kavod? Wasn't she the one who set off this chain of events by telling him that he should look outside of her for the fulfillment of his dream of children? Madua hi yatsa al Avraham beka'as ubeha'ashma. And why does her tone, why does it seem that she's coming now to Avraham in anger and blame? And again, it's hard to understand if this was her idea and her suggestion, what happened that now she's coming at him with a lot of anger and a lot of blame? Madua hidawdera lichdei inui shifrata, right? And now why is she collapsing and losing center when she's exposed to mocking and humiliation and diminishment by the hands of her maidservant? Okay, like in other words, we might ask, where's her inner kavod? Where's her inner worth? Where's her inner sense of self? Why is being mistreated by a maidservant evoking within her so much anger and so much desire to blame, right? Okay. Hasibahi, so the reason is, or one of the reasons is, right? Shehi haita adayin Sarai, that she was still in the consciousness of Sarai. Im chetzi ot odefet, with an excess of a certain energy, right? An excessive hay, right? the yud contained within it two hays, and she has this extra hay energy. Bichinat chotem bolet, that she's protruding, right? Yachasit, the tiv'ah, relative to her nature, ha'amiti, to her true nature. In other words, she's trying to control and force the flow and force her will, which is contrary to the feminine nature, which is to allow, to accept, to receive. Again, we want to be very careful, right, not to take these to binary shadow places, like therefore she has to receive abuse, or therefore she's not allowed to speak up and ask for what she needs, or that's not what we're saying at all, right? We have to be very, very subtle as we are learning this new path and these new energies, okay? But there was something about her that was masculine. In other words, she had an excess of masculine energy, which showed up as her trying to control, her trying to influence the flow, her trying to make things happen, her trying to move the story forward, okay? And like imposing her will upon it. Whereas in its loveliness, she can relax more. She can decide, she can actually be more in rest, that things come to her and she can decide whether she wants to let it in or not let it in. And if she's healthy, if it's something good, she can let it in and she can allow herself to trust it and to receive it and to be softer and to be more accepting and more passive in the best sense of what we mean passive, right? We mean receiving goodness. She can allow herself to receive goodness. Okay. תפקודה בזוגיות אופיין בעודף התבלטות בכך שנאלצה למלא את התפקיד הגברי במקום בעלה. And it says, but when she was still Sarai and not Sarah, this almost like excessive masculine energy was pushing her to act as the man, as the masculine in the relationship, to make things happen, to move things along, to force an outcome, to force Abraham to make certain choices, to right? But it's very active. It's a very active, but in shadow could even be experienced maybe as domineering or controlling. Okay, even when it's coming from love, it can still be coming from the sweetest place. Yes, I know, that's why I'm saying it. It can still be coming from the sweetest desire to help the other person and to be of service and to be a part of someone's healing and to give them goodness, right? But it's overactive in that it's not letting the person find their own strength, develop their own independence, trust their own process, and yeah, okay, good. Okay, so bemilim pshutot, in simple words, kol tzad, every side, sichek ktsat et tafkid hatzad hasheni, that Sarah was acting, if you might say, in over masculine, and Avram, if you might say, was acting in over feminine. Sarah was trying too hard, and Avraham was being too passive.
Wait, just to interrupt 1 second, is this part of their fertility struggle spiritually?
Absolutely. Sure.
I mean, I know he had to have a bris milah, blah, 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 but it seems like the femininity and masculinity aspect was out of balance and that impacts, right?
Of course.
So
Of course,
interesting.
like it'll show up through every system, right? Like this is what I was trying to say before, that to be honest, the reason I know this Torah in my bones is because I fell in it a million times, right? And the Torah says that. You really want to know a Torah, you actually, I mean, I don't recommend the Chatchila, this formula, but right, when you fall in a certain Torah again and again and again, when you get it, you really get it, right? And I made this mistake again and again and again, that I thought the expression of love, as I showed up in relationships with all of the masculine energies in my life, was to give more, to try harder, to show up for them, to help them with their businesses, to cook and to clean and to serve and to, and I love that side. Honestly, I love that feminine service. But it was very, very difficult for me to let go of giving, stop giving, and be given to. And many, 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 many of us women, especially if we're dealing with a lot of dysfunction, like, not to, again, we don't want to pathologize anybody's parts, right? In all compassion, but if we're dealing in dysfunctional energy systems like abuse and addiction and depression, we women, it gets polarized. We women try harder and harder to fix it, or to get him to want to fix it, which is very masculine, right? It's imposing our will, even our lovely will, even our sweet will, even our vision of him in wholeness and health. It's still masculine, and in that it's imposing upon someone else, right? So Sarai had that. And of course, and I've seen this system, the more the feminine does that, the more passive the masculine becomes, because the roles have been reversed, because the energy systems are out of alignment, right? So the less he wants to do, and the less he wants to participate, and the less he takes ownership of his own life and soul and body, and the less. Now, we're not talking about not supporting your husband. That's not what anybody is saying. We're saying we're learning what does it look like to support in a way that really allows flow and connection, and to support in a way that intensifies the polarities, right? So that's what we're saying. Of course, why get married if you're not going to support each other, right? But we're trying to learn how to do this in a more balanced way that will have more beautiful results, right? More harmonious for every party. Okay. Monea b'chach miben zugo lemamesh et atzmo. And he says, because it was miswired, both sides were stuck and not being able to live their full potential. Sarai was stuck that she couldn't express her full feminine side, and Avram was stuck that he wasn't able to manifest his full, healthy, whole masculine, right? So again, I want to say this for women, because I didn't realize that I was hurting my men. The more I was trying and the more I was giving, the more I was like infantilizing them to not touch the masculine in them that wanted to feel strong and in control and capable and able to lead and able to give and able to make decisions and act upon them. And that's how they experience the yumminess of their masculine energy. But I was in so much masculine, which I thought was feminine. That's the joke, right? That because I kept giving and trying and suggesting another suggestion, and let's work harder at this relationship, and let's try this and let's try that, right? Which many of us do, which is why I'm sharing this. Okay. Etzel Sarah, so on Sarah's side, on the feminine side, harayon murogash b'miuchad b'milin chamasi alecha. Okay, so on the feminine side, we can really get a sense of what's happening inside Sarah, that the energies are really polarized now and really frozen and really imbalanced from her words when she says to Avram, right? Hamasi alecha, my wrath is upon you. By the way, in case some of you don't know this, the word Hamas means violence and it means wrath, right? Raging anger. Okay, so it says, she says, Hamasi alecha, my wrath is upon you. בין אם משמעותו היא העונש שאני סובלת ממנו הוא בגלל שלא התפללת עליי. So he says, whether what she means by that is, I'm suffering because you didn't daven for me to also have children. Uvein im, or if whether what she means here is et hatu hit what's this word? Hitraumat sheli al hagar ata amur lebate, or whether okay. So saying, what's the source of her wrath? So whether the source of her wrath was that Avraham davened for children for himself, but he didn't daven specifically that his wife that it should come through her. He just davened for children, and so he's getting children through Hagar, and that's the source of Sarah's wrath. Or if the source of her wrath is that Hagar is mocking me and diminishing me, and you're doing nothing, right? You're not protecting me. You're not stopping it. Okay. Okay, honey. Okay. Habitui omeo, what her words and what she's expressing, that my wrath is upon you. Shesara noset betocha ichut gavrit mesuyamet, that so we're hearing energetically that she has this right now, like excessive masculine energy in her. She'amura lihiyot etzel Avraham, that she's doing and trying and doing all of this, and he's not doing and not trying. In other words, she is in overactive and he is way down, not only underactive, but passive, right? And so you can feel the imbalance, okay? And that's really what's happening in their space. She's in overactive mode, and they're influencing each other, right? He's going so passive, which is making her go so overactive, and she's so overactive that it's making him more and more passive, and they're stuck in these polarities. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Someone wrote in the chat box, like, oh my gosh, why is this all my story? Because it's the story of all the masculine and feminine as it learns. Okay. And both of them are suffering, as you can see. Okay. This wrath that's bubbling and inside of me, he kmo omeret hu be'etzem shelcha. Wow. Okay. So now it's so beautiful and strong, which she's saying, like, I'm angry, but I'm angry because I'm functioning with this extra energy of like doing and trying. And the truth is, if you would take and receive that energy, and you, like, it works in your system, and it would help activate you and be the active one, right? Achen, לפי המדרש דלעיל האמור כי ההא של אברהם מקורה ביוד של שרי. And it says that now, if we understand it from the perspective of the above midrash, we can say that Abraham's hay was like trapped in Sarai, right? And like needed to be released and needed to go back to its proper source and its proper home. Nimtza, we find ki zacharuto shel Avram nimtza bemuvan mesuyam bereshut Sarai, that Abraham's masculine energy is right now somehow trapped within Sarai, right? Within Reshut means like her property, her domain. Sarai memalet et hachalal shehu amur litfos. So energetically, right? Like there's been a crossing where she is in the masculine shatach or playing field, like she's crossed the boundary that she's taken upon herself to act like the masculine. And the more she does that, the more he goes into his feminine. Okay? Wow. דבר זה מתקשר לפשט של Hashem Sarai. And this is reflected in the most simple way in her name, Sarai, Sin Resh Yud. Sheperusho, whose meaning is Hasar or Hasarim Sheli, right? My commanding officer. Sarai means my commanding officer. So she was acting like his commanding officer, okay, which was throwing the whole balance of their energy off, that it was up to her to be the commanding officer in their marriage, in their relationship, in charge of his physical, in charge of his emotional, in charge of his spiritual, that Sarai means like, I'm the commanding officer. It means Sheli. Kesarai, Koshri, and Koshri also means my might, my power, my decision, my control. Menatevet Sarah et koach ha-shrara sheba leyachas shitlatni klape ba'ala. Okay, so there's something off in her leadership quality that is she's acting like a leader, but in a masculine way, like acting like his commanding officer and acting upon him, right, towards her husband in this energy of like, I'm the leader and I'm your commanding officer and you will do my will. And if you just listen to me and do my will, our marriage will be okay and you'll get better and you'll be okay. And right, it's like a very, again, it can be coming from a place of great love and great concern and deep care and a deep desire to help. Yeah. Okay, but that's the energy. Ra'ayon zeh, so this idea, mechuzak b'yedei perush Rashi, is even strengthened if we look at Rashi's explanation, al hapasuk, on the verse, hatuha al ha'uvda shehamila uveinecha, bepasuk yishpot Hashem beini uveinecha, me'oyetet beyud yetera. Okay, so now Rashi says we can even really have a proof of understanding that energetically she's in over masculine, because when we look at the pasuk and she says Hashem will judge between us, between me and you, it says Hashem mishpot Hashem beini uveinecha, God will judge between me and you, right? The word uveinecha has an extra yud in it. It's written vav bet yud nun yud chaf sofit. It's got an excess of yud energy in it. Okay. Rashi will ebekach. So Rashi learns out from this and understands from this that this is hinting to us energetically. Remez שהמשפט נאמר בעצם להגר, כלומר, שהמילה האחרונה צריכה להיקרא ובנייך. Okay, so Rashi says, one way we could understand this extra yud in the word ubeinecha is that she's really directing her rage at Hagar, and then it would be read uvanayich. God is going to judge between me, Sarah, right, Sarai, and you, Hagar, right? Hu mekasher zot, and Rashi understands this and makes this connection. Lemidrash hatoen ki b'milim elu hitila Sarah behagar ayin ra'a v'garma lehapalat havalad. Okay, so this is a very hard, sad, sensitive, very piece of Torah that says that I don't even really understand what this means, but I do know what it means in my personal life. Okay, so plug it into your personal life. That Rashi says here that Sarai, right, had an ayin hara towards Hagar, and which caused Hagar to miscarry and lose the baby. Okay, so ouch, right? So maybe what we might mean when we say like an ayin hara is like looking at another person and having a resentment in our heart and a bitterness and a sense of because remember the word she uses, right, is yishpot, judge. Hashem should judge here, meaning I feel that something is not right here, not just, not balanced, not fair, right? And okay, so he continues. ורק כאשר הגר שבה הביתה היא התעברה שנית. And only when Hagar returned home did she conceive a second time. Wow, these are such deep Torahs. מתבקש להקיש כי היוד היתרה במירה ובנייך היא היוד הזכרית של השם Sarai. So Rashi then connects this whole story and says this, that we might understand Sarah being filled with this masculine, i.e., aggressive, overdoing, over owning, overextending, over trying, that's being experienced by Avram as pushing him into over passivity and over closing, right? And Rashi says we can understand that by making the connection that this word uvenaich has two yuds in it when it doesn't usually have two yuds in it. שכאשר מצטרפת לאש הקנאה הנשית שלה מתגלה כבעלת נופך מסוכן ממש. And it's also inviting us in, right? I think as we as women, right? To touch this place inside of us where things, our energies are so out of alignment and so almost like crazed and so imbalanced that we really can slip into and fall into places of extreme experiences of jealousy and resentment and hatred and competition, and it can manifest on a side of like a collapse of self, right? Where we're like crying and we can't, we don't believe we deserve anything. But it can also manifest as an overabundance of self, of like hatred and judgment and criticism and anger, and right. And so this is what Rashi is saying, that we can hear how one imbalance feeds into the next imbalance, and right, everything is sort of off kilter in the dance between the masculine and the feminine. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat because I see someone wrote something. That's right. Okay, so someone is sharing, there can even be like a voice in the feminine that if the masculine would have just listened to me and gone to therapy and saved our marriage, and if he would have just changed, and if he just would have stopped using, and if he just would have changed in X, Y, and Z ways, then right, we wouldn't have had to have gotten divorced. And like there's a subtle, not subtle message that it's all your fault, and I'm the leader and I'm the captain and I know what should be here, and if you would just listen to me and do it my way, you schmo, we could have this beautiful happy family and life. And right, and it's an energy in us women that we understand how it got born, and it needs to be unburdened, as Richard Schwartz would say, right? It needs to be lifted of its burden of the over managing and over protecting, and allowed to be set free from that burden, to allow more harmonious and peaceful connection to ourselves and to each other, right? Okay. Questions up until this point? Okay. I know that I'm flooding everybody. I'm doing it on purpose because I want to finish Sarah. If you need to get off, please get off. And there is a recording, and you can, you listening to it, right, whether live now or on the recording, take in as much as feels good for you to take in at a time, because I know this is a lot of information at once. Okay. Ma'agal Ksamim, the magic circle. Okay. Mi asham b'dinamikat ayachasim hazu. Who is responsible for this type of relationship dynamic? Ha'im zehu Avraham? Is it Avraham's fault? Shelo yotzeh migadro, that didn't extend himself. V'lo lokeach achrayut, and is not taking responsibility. Al tafkido keba'al, and stepping into his responsibility and his role as husband. Ulaizu dafka Sara, but or maybe no, maybe it's dafka Sara. Shelo notenet lo, he's damnut, who doesn't give him any space and doesn't give him any chance. Umiyad mochichauto, and immediately starts criticizing him and telling him what to do and taking control. This question deeply touches deeply touches us and deeply touches our lives. מצבים כאלו של היפוך תפקידים שלילי אינם תופעה מוכרת בין זוגות. This experience where there's energy switches and there's role reversals, and the woman is acting like the masculine and the man is acting like the feminine, are very, very common and well known in zugiyut, in partnering, in marriage, and in partnering. Be'ikar b'dorot ha'achonim, and even more so in the last couple of generations and in our generation. Le'itim, sometimes, הם מתחילים מכך, they begin מכך שהגבר נרפא מאחריותו, that the man is not stepping up and stepping in and taking responsibility. להיות נוכח, to be present. Where he needs to be, when he needs to be there, and do what he needs to do, right? He's saying sometimes this wounded dynamic begins because it's true that the masculine and the man is not stepping into his responsibilities and doing what he needs to do when he needs to do it, and being where he needs to be, and taking, and as a result, Ha'isha ne'eletzet la'asot et tafkido. And as a result of him not doing what he needs to do and stepping up and stepping in, she feels compelled and forced, maybe even against her will, to step into and take over those responsibilities or those roles that he's not doing. And sometimes it's the opposite. Ha'isha tofeset makom shehu amur lemaleh, that a woman is so domineering and dominant in the relationship that she's taking up all the space and all the room, and she's even taking over his space and she's taking over his role, right? And she's filling all the space. And she's controlling everything, and she's giving her opinion on everything, and she's deciding how everything should be and has to be and must be, right? And as a result, he collapses and he goes small, and and he shuts himself off inside of himself. Okay, so now we really want, it's very important for me to say here, we're not limited to an actual husband and wife when understanding these energies and dynamics, okay? Yeah, it often happens in husband and wife, but it happens in any relationship where one is over bossy, over controlling, over dictating, over criticizing, over domineering, overdoing, over giving, overextending. And the other one, as a result, will often then go into more and more the passive. There's no point in my even trying to take up space. There's no point in my even sharing my opinion. She's just going to do whatever she wants. There's no space for me to have a different opinion. There's no space for me to disagree, right? She's right and she has all the answers, right? Now that dynamic can show up between two women friends, between two male friends, between a mother and a daughter, between, right? Like it's not just limited to husband and wife, right? It's talking about masculine energy and feminine energy, not just a man and a woman or a husband and a wife, but also including that, okay? Okay, so, okay, בסופו של דבר, and in the end, ein ze meshana mi hitchil. It doesn't matter who started. It doesn't matter if she's over masculine or he's under masculine or he's overly feminine or she's not feminine enough. Sheken berega shehalgalgal matchil, as soon as these patterns are set off, matchil yitgalgel hamatzav notel hacharif et atzmo. Then once this pattern is set into place, it tends to just get more and more polarized and more extreme, right? And he's not doing, so she's doing more, and she's doing more, so she's angrier, and she's angrier at him, so he closes off and shuts down more, and he closes off and shuts down more, and she gets angrier, blah, okay? ככל שאחד הצדדים מתנהג בדפוס השייך לשני, as long as each side is using the energy of the other side instead of being in more in wholeness of their energy, then it gets worse and worse and worse. כך גובר תסכולו של הצד השני והוא מתחזק בדפוס השלילי שלו. He's really saying each side, as it gets more and more polarized, digs in its heels, right? So we might say that like the overactive masculine side, right, becomes more controlling and more bossy and more in your face and more taking up all the space and wanting to make all the decisions and have all the control and direct the story, and even tell the husband like how to love me and when to love me and what to buy me and what not to buy me, and I don't like it like this, and I like, right, it's very masculine. And ironically, a woman truly believes in her soul. If I just point out to him what he's doing wrong, he'll fix it and then we can be great. But that's not how he experiences it. He experiences it energetically, that she's trying to force him to change and trying and pushing him to become something or be something that maybe he's not there yet. And he's going to push back. And the pushback, he's saying, is to close and to close off more and more and more, and to step up less and less and less, and to avoid the connection, and to pull back presence, and to take, I don't mean presence like, but also, right? And to take less interest in the relationship and less responsibility for the relationship, right? Because the energies are going like this. Don't worry, he wrote a whole book on how to fix this. That's the whole point. Okay. And each one digs in their heels in getting stuck in the polarity that they're holding. The most difficult thing about this, that in these wonderful energy, stuck, repetitive relationship patterns, who shekol tzad noteh lehashim et hatzad hasheni b'matzavo, that each one is sure that it's the other person's fault, and the other person is to blame, and they're doing their best, and they're in the right, and they're the good one, and they're the one who knows how to relationship, and the other person is the problem. The other person is the source of the pain and the suffering. And if they would just stop doing what they're doing or start doing what they're supposed to be doing, then everything could be okay. And each side is saying, when the other person changes, then there's a possibility for our marriage to get fixed, because I'm good and I'm doing everything right, or I've tried everything, right? And he said it's equally the masculine blaming the feminine and the feminine blaming the masculine. The masculine saying, right, the over masculine woman saying, like, you don't take care of me, you don't protect me, you don't take action, you don't do what I say, you don't make me feel safe, you don't go out and work, you don't whatever it is, right? And the over feminized masculine is saying, you don't believe in me, you don't see me, you don't build me, you don't support me, you don't give me a chance to be in my masculine, because you're busy controlling everything and taking over everything and having opinions about everything. And it goes round and round. Okay. Haisha omeret latzma. So the woman says to herself, Kol hahitnalgut shali hi rak biglal bali. I have to be bossy and overly masculine, because if you had my husband, you would also have to be like that, right? She says, every single woman says to herself, I am the way I am because of my husband. My husband forced me into this role. My husband forced me to be over controlling and overly bossy and overly opinionated and overly critical and unappreciative and hard and not soft and not receptive. I didn't want to be those things, but he forced me into this role because he's not doing his part, right? He's so passive, he's so undecisive. I don't have a choice, but to be more masculine. In other words, he's not being a doer, so I have to be the doer. Okay, by the way, I don't know if this matters to anybody, but this is classic Al-Anon and AA. Classic, like you don't get more classic than this, right? That one is shirking off responsibility and the other one takes on over responsibility and over manages. And as they take on more responsibility and covering for the other passive person, their inner resentment and rage is growing and growing. And the other passive person feels that rage. So they stay away and they do less. And right. And they shut down more and they distance themselves more, and round it goes. And one of the most beautiful things that I personally received as a member of Al-Anon, right, is, let me see if I remember it even. There's something like the 5 M's or something like that you give up: mommying, martyrdom, masochism, managing, and I forgot, could be moodiness, but it's not. Don't remember. Okay, maybe it will come, right? But you can feel that all of those energies would not be so healthy between a husband and a wife partnership, to mommy him, or to become a martyr, or to become a masochist, or to become managing. I'm going to manage him and all his problems, and manage me and all my problems. And it's a sign in Al-Anon that if you're managing everything, you're probably super spiritually sick. Super. I know that doesn't feel yummy to hear. Okay. Yeah. Takes one to know one, honey. I know. Right. This is where we begin healing, when we're like, oh, how weird. I thought I was like being the best partner and wife possible, and I didn't know that I was spiritually sick. Okay, that's okay. Right. I know. Listen, Sarai didn't know it either, and we're her daughters and grandchildren. And so it makes sense that we're going to go through a similar process. Okay.
Are we going to get to the point of what to do? Because the problem is, I'm really good at managing and momming. I'm actually the best at it. If anybody wants tips, just call me and I'll give you a free consult on that.
Oh, no,
Now that we're done with the managing and the momming and being in the masculine, and if he listens to me, then like we'll be safe. Now what? Because that's the problem.
Yeah, don't worry, Sarai. The first thing is we go
Are we
from
going to heal? Like, is there a possibility for the feminine to heal, or we do?
Of course, this is the whole point of this book. Mi zot ola. Look who is rising into her malchut, into her true feminine. That's the whole point.
Because I'm like panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the feminine and the masculine, over managing and taking care, and then babying and mommy, and then wondering why he's not being masculine.
Right. But you understand that when we see the imbalance, we can begin to heal it.
Right. Awareness is first step.
Many of us, we were stuck for years in, I was the good one in the relationship. I tried, I gave, I davened, I worked, I managed, I cleaned, I cooked, I held him, I listened to him. I told him if he would just go to therapy, I told him how he could fix himself. I told him he just wouldn't do it, right?
It's true though. It's true.
Right, it's true,
But I
because
think something I had a chiddush that this is back to Sarah 1-2, when you talked about the yod is 10, and you said that there's a number 10 between the two partnership. Mathematically, Sarai had the 10. She needed to transfer over into the account of Ram and Hay. She needed to do a bank transfer. So
yes,
now we have 10, we've gone to 5. So I think maybe it's that when the women are taking up the 10,
right.
then there's no room for the man who's at a 0. We have to be able to let go of control and see if he'll pick up that 5. Because then Avraham Avinu had to do the bris milah thing, which if you ask a man is not really the first choice. So that's sort of where I'm stuck. Because Avram didn't get the hay for free. He had to like butcher himself in order to receive that. Or I'm sorry, receive the healthy masculine, whatever you want to call bris milah.
Okay,
So there's a part of it where he has to take responsibility.
I have a crazy story to share. So because I was a single mother, I am both the masculine and the feminine, right?
Exactly. Hello.
I know you can't relate, and nobody else on the
Can't
line.
relate at all. Never experienced that.
Okay, so I overdid, and I had tons of resentment and tons of anger because I had to go out and work, and I had to study, and I had to clean the house, and I had to cook, and I had to do homework. Like I had to be mommy and daddy. And I didn't teach my children collaboration because I didn't know how to do collaboration. I knew how to be in charge. I didn't know how to be part of a team. I was not a good team player. I was not a good team player in my marriage either. I asked my husband to do things, and when he didn't do them, I would be angry, and then I would just do it myself.
But then you
Right.
would still be waiting today, 30 years later, for him to pick up the pile of clothes.
I mean, again, I would never want to humiliate him like that, but it could
Yes,
be true about someone else's husband. I'm just
somebody
saying.
else's husband. It's like picture like an emoji of like a skeleton, like one of those memes. It's like waiting for my husband to do the dishes, like
Well, I want to say by the end of my marriage, I didn't hate my husband. I hated myself. The
codependent, right?
main reason that I got divorced, I loved my husband. I hated myself. I hated to always be bossy and managing and controlling and angry and resentful and not playful and not joyful because I was resentful and tired and overburdened and right.
Codependent.
But it was like, yeah, we know these places, and so I'll give you an example. So when my kids were, I wouldn't say they were little. I would say like, I don't know, maybe in the teenage years, right? And I was working, at the hospital full time, which was a lot. And then I was whatever, working in other things too. And but I thought it was a badge of pride in me to do everything and manage everything. And I thought it made me a great mother. And I didn't realize that I was a great mother on an active level, but in my soul, I was holding a lot of anger, right? Because I would clean the whole house and then they would mess it up. I would cook and then they wouldn't eat it. I would there was
Yep.
like anger like bubbling inside of me. And it didn't mean I didn't love them. I mean, I would die for my children, and even harder, I would live for my children, which honestly, in my case, is even harder, you know. Um, but what I didn't know how to do was ask for help in a real way, not a naggy way, not an angry way, not a controlling way, not a threatening way, not a pleading, begging way. I didn't know how to do any of that. Um, and I didn't know how to collaborate, and I didn't know how to teach my children collaboration. So I did everything, and I was exhausted, and I was tired, and I was sad. And maybe I wouldn't even admitted then that I was angry. It would have been easier for me to just say I'm tired and sad, because to me, anger felt like that makes me a bad mommy if if I have anger, right? So I probably hid away all that anger too until midday palm, as my children would be so happy to sit down and share with you. I would meet potsets and explode on them and on myself and on everything and everybody. I don't mean by hitting, chas v'shalom. I just mean yelling and again, how loud do I yell? I barely have a voice, but the energy felt yucky. That's all I could say, right? Mommy's freaking out, right? And I remember one Shabbos, and I came home and I was so tired, and I started cooking, and one of my kids complained about something, and I was like, you know what? I'm not making Shabbos. Not from a bitter place and not from an angry place, from a true, I'm done. I'm not making Shabbos. I'm perfectly happy to have some hummus and, a little piece of challah. You guys figure it out. And I went into my room and I laid down and I was really okay. I'm like, I'm really fine to have hummus and bread. Like, I'm not going to be suffering. I've reached my limit. That's my real, true limit. And I went and I laid down and I rested and I was fine. And I got up after a few hours and my kids had made the entire Shabbos.
So that's the leaving space.
Yeah, and it wasn't leaving space like, if you guys don't make Shabbos, then you're going to get an onesh, or like I literally let go. I was like, I'm not taking action here. If someone else wants to take action, fine. If no one wants to take action here, fine.
But you were saying it wasn't even a bad thing because you're like challah and pita is and hummus is totally fine, and I don't need anything. I could even cut up a salad in the morning if I want. It's
Yes,
not the end of the world. It's not like you're saying I'm not going grocery shopping, I'm not doing this, and if
I
Shabbos
didn't-
comes along, we have no
yes,
bread and grape juice, then
yes.
we're in trouble.
But I didn't know that because to me, the expression of Shabbos was 17 salatim and fresh bread and soup and salad and entree and right. Like that's what I'm not a good mommy if it's all my own stuff. If I don't provide all of that and my children don't receive it and it's not liked and it's not yummy and all that stuff we do in our head.
Right.
But it was such a beautiful example of I'm not fighting, I'm not crying, I'm not. So this is, again, I want to bring this in because of Al-Anon, because this is super important here. And Al-Anon, here's a tool. And I urge you, I really, not you specifically, you, all of us, right? To write this down and really allow it in, because these are beautiful tools, right? How do you know when you're in Sarai energy? The over masculine, the overdoing, right? Ready? So it goes like this. If you find yourself in relationship trying to change the other person through any of the following means: crying, begging, threatening to leave, right? Pleading, explaining, right? I'll say it again. I saw you got out your little flowery notebook. Okay.
Wait, I like ran to get the notebook and then I lost Klita just fast. Hold
I
on.
know I saw.
I'm on my shuffling. Hold on. Excuse me as I shuffle. Okay. So it's Sarai mode is the over masculine. I missed it.
Yeah, and here's
Oh.
how it shows up, okay? We're trying to get someone else to change through any of the following means, okay? Crying, begging, threatening,
Crying.
and especially threatening but not following through with our threats. Like, if you don't stop drinking, I'll leave, but then not leaving when they do continue drinking. That's a classic one, right? Over explaining. Just I was the master of over explaining. My poor kids, I would lecture my kids on for 3 hours of why we should do it like this so that it will heal our family, and like, oh my God, my poor kids. Okay. Again, thinking I was being the best mother, like I never hit, I never punish, I explain. Wow. No.
Hold on.
Okay, are we ready?
Hold on. I'm still shuffling. My pen died and I'm shuffling around, but keep going. I am kind of ready.
We find our own boundary. This is how we go from Sarai to Sarah. We don't do those things. We don't beg, plead, threaten, cry, manipulate in any way, right? To force our way, to force the other person to do what we want. We let go. We find our own boundary, what we will or will not accept, and we stay true to that. And we don't have to justify it by explaining it or begging or crying or getting on our knees, sobbing and saying, if you would only change, if you would just change. We don't expend our energy at all changing the other person. It never works anyway. And we end up hating ourselves and depleted and exhausted, and sure that we're the right ones and we're the good ones. Don't do it. Right? So the work from Sarai to Sarah is, it's not my job to change you, and I never will change you anyway. My job is to get clear of what I want and don't want, will accept and won't accept, and follow through on that in the most peaceful way, because I no longer have to be not peaceful about it, because I'm not trying to get you to change or change your mind or give me something you don't want to give me. I always, and in Al-Anon, they will tell you, you always have free choice of what to allow in and accept and what to not allow in and accept. Now, it's hilarious that I'm teaching this because I'm the worst at this. But that's Hashem's sense of humor. And at least I'm a little better than I was 5 years ago, and I'm a lot better than I was 10 years ago. Maybe by the time
So
I'm
Sarai was codependent.
what, honey?
Sarai was codependent. But it's interesting because I thought,
Let's not use those
I'm not trying to
languages.
pathologize Zarima. I'm just saying, okay, what I'm trying to say is that it's so the opposite of what I thought Sarai was, because Sarai means like my princess, my royalty, and she was a receiver of grandeur, and she was able to be in her own malchus,
Yeah.
but yet she was still doing this nagging thing. So if she was really in her own malchus, why would she be nagging?
These energies are, we're talking about the balancing. To balance energies is very subtle because they're in flow and they're shifting. Hopefully, right? It's when actually they get frozen and stuck in polarities that we get in trouble, right? Because sometimes a woman is a mother to her husband, and that can be very beautiful. And a man, every man I've ever asked this question to, and he's honest, wants his wife sometimes to give him mothering energy. Mothering energy can feel very tender, and especially since it's non-sexual, it's not demanding him to perform sexually to earn her love, right? It's allowing him to receive tenderness, right? We just don't want to get stuck in the polarities of she's always mommying him and he's always showing up like an irresponsible boy, because she ends up hurting and he ends up hurting, and their relationship gets stuck and frozen, you know? Okay. So, okay, 1 second. Okay, so he gave one example where like the feminine is saying he's so passive and never takes initiative and doesn't protect us and doesn't provide. I have no choice but to step in and fulfill the role of the masculine. That's one classic way this shows up. I wish that I could be released from this burden or this energy pattern. Right? But if this is the voice in the feminine. I know this voice. I lived this voice. But if I let up for a second, the house will fall apart. I lived this to an extreme. Like, I mean, I had a beautiful, amazing husband, but these were my own emotional wounds and energy, wounds and beliefs. And I remember, like, we lived in the gush, and I would go in for a day of errands, and I would, leave our daughter with my husband. And, and I would come home and every single space in the house would be a balagan. Why? Because they were having fun and playing. They would make cookies and they would watch a video and my husband's it's funny I said my husband. My ex-husband is one of the most creative beings on the planet. So they would build a bunny hutch and they would, right? But literally every space would be overcome with chaos. And my whole energy system would be freaking out because I needed order and cleanliness in order to feel safe. That's how my system was. I had a lot of trauma responses around chaos, right? So I would step in like, oh my God, this room is a mess, that's room, like I can't leave you, whatever, right? That definitely that energy of like, you're making my life harder, right? Unfortunately. Okay, b'makbil, and paralleling this on the other side of the equation, haba'al omer le'atzmo, the man, the husband, the masculine says to himself, ilu rak ishti hayta yoter nashit, if I only had a softer, more feminine wife. Raka u'mekabelet, if the whole problem is that she's not open and receptive and she doesn't receive from me, and she's so tough and she's so controlling and she's so bossy. And if I just had a like more dainty, refined, quiet, wife that would do what I want, then I could show up in the masculine the way I really want to. Yoter mechabedet oti kegever. You know what the issue is? She doesn't respect me as a man. She has no respect for me. If she would give me the proper respect that I need as a man, who's ever heard those words? Hadavar haya mechazek li, it would give me the strength. Et habitachon vehayiti yachol liyot gavri yoter. And if she would only respect me, she would build me, and then I would be able to be in my real masculine. Okay. Bishnei kaveh achashiva yesh emet, and the thing is, we want to say, there is truth to both sides are seeing something and experiencing something and reflecting something that's not a lie. It's true. Ein safek, without a doubt. Ach, ha'hashlacha hama'asit shelahem hi הרסנית ומשיגה בדיוק את התוצאות ההפוכות מאלו שבני הזוג רוצים. Says, yes. Are you seeing something that's out of balance? Yes. Is it true that things are out of balance? Yes. Is it true that the masculine and feminine are out of balance? Yes. All of that is true, without a doubt. It says, but the way that each one expresses that pain, anger, hurt, sadness, disappointment over the imbalance in the energies, ironically ends up just reinforcing those same patterns and getting the same results again and again and again, which actually neither side wants, right? He doesn't want to feel emasculated. She doesn't want to feel over masculine, but we're stuck. Okay. And one of the central main reasons why this happens is שהבעל מתקשה להיות הגבר שאשתו הייתה רוצה שיהיה. And he says, one of the main things that encourages a man to become the man and the husband that not only that she wants him to be, but he also himself wants to become this, be this. He shehi tofeset lo et kol hamakom, right? It's and he'll say, and he's not wrong, that he can't function as the masculine because has taken over all the space. She dictates the rules in the house, and she tells him what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And now we're going to therapy, and now we're not, and we're going to see this person and not that person. And I need you to take off your shoes at the door, and I need you to not touch this, and I need you to whatever, right? And so he feels like, why should I bother? She takes up all the space. But again, by the way, I really want to say this again, that this is not limited to just husband and wife. It's a dynamic where one is over expanding and the other is over contracting, right? One is taking up all the space and one is taking up no space, right? I see this, I have friendships that are like this with other women. So it's an energy pattern. And I would also say, if it just for the sake of sharing with you guys, that this shows up a lot in the 1st and 7th houses on the astrological chart. And as a core difference, by the way, between the 1st house is Yehuda, it's the lion, and it's Bnei Leah, and the 7th house is Ephraim, and it's the scales, right? The balance of self and other, and it's Bnei Rachel, right? So these are core energies of self and other. How much space? And at 2:30, we're going to continue our class on the goats and exploring this from the perspective of the 2 goats. Okay, but it's again these same core questions of having an eye and seeing other. And right, for some of us, we completely relinquish I in service of other. I've pretty much done it my whole life, right? And for some people, they're so in I that there's no space for other, right? And again, this is all what we're being asked to learn, this beautiful dance of self and other. Okay. הדבר מאיים עליו, מכווץ אותו, וגורם לו לרצות לברוח. It says again, don't think about this as particular people for a moment. Think about it as I once had a marriage therapist who said this to me, and it really helped me a lot. That I don't know enough about football, but like there's right, the 2 teams on the 2 sides, and they're both trying to make a touchdown on the opposite team's goal line, and she was explaining it to me like that, like, Reva, if you cross the field, like you're doing more than your half, you're doing more than your part, and you think that's noble, and you think that it will give you a better marriage. But the truth is, when a woman overdoes, a man underdoes. That's the claw. When a woman overly tries to fix the relationship, the man loses interest in fixing the relationship. Right? It's again, it's energetic. It's when the woman begs him to come back and keeps chasing him and keeps trying to make it work. Oftentimes that will make him run, close and run, only because again, the energies are not being held by both people. One is in an extreme chasing state, so the other is in an extreme running place, right? One is over giving, so one is over closing. So the way to balance is to stop that behavior, right? To take the focus off for us women. What is he doing or not doing? And put the focus back onto what we want to receive. Or again, sorry, we're going to have to go through the process to get there, but okay. So, Boto ofen, and along in the same vein, התנהגות האישה נובעת במידה רבה מתסכול מכך שהגבר לא מספיק נוכח בזוגיות בצורה טובה. And he says, let's also offer deep compassion now to us, to the women, to the feminine side, that like I said, I didn't get divorced because I hated my husband. I got divorced because I hated myself, because I didn't like who I had become to be so like pedantic all the time, to always have to be responsible and in charge and bossy and in charge of all the marachot, right? All of the programming for the family, and I guess controlling, is the word, even though I thought it was coming from so much love. And I wouldn't give myself time to play or enjoy or create because I was so scared that the house would fall apart. I was so scared that I wouldn't do my job perfectly of, all the clean and ironed laundry and the beautiful meals, and not from an ego place of wanting other people's approval, really from wanting to give my family the best. But still, having a deep belief inside that I can't trust him that if I let go of all this control, everything is going to get done, and everything is going to get done the way I want it done, and everything is going to feel safe the way I want it, right? So he's actually not in a judgmental place at all, in a very loving place, giving voice to the feminine experience of this, which is like, I wish I didn't have to take on so much. I wish I didn't have to take on all these burdens. I wish that my husband would show up. I wish my husband would show up with presence. I don't mean presents like gifts. I mean presence, P-R, right? E-S-E-N-C-E, presence, like want to spend time with me and want to partner with me and want to equally share this energy and equally support each other, right? I know a lot of women don't feel like that. And so they overtake on the burdens, and they're both true. אם הוא יתחיל לעשות זאת, היא תוכל להרפות משליטתה. He says that the sad thing is that when one changes the dance really and sticks to it and practices, the dance can change. So he's giving an example, and he says, for example, if he steps into showing up more for her and asking her, what can I do today to help you? And doing it, right? And then she doesn't have to stay on his heels all the time. And she can let go, and she will let go as she starts to feel more cared for and more seen and more provided for. Provided doesn't have to be money, by the way, right? Not all women need or want tons of money. It's they want to know that he cares and he's present and he wants to share in the responsibility and he really wants to partner. Okay. And that allows her to actually give up control. לפתוח בו ולמצוא לו יותר את המושכות. הבעיה היא שכל צד מחכה שהשני ישתנה קודם. Okay, so he says, yes, it's true. If a woman wouldn't be so domineering and bossy and controlling and nagging and begging for contact and begging for intimacy and begging for more time and begging for connection, a man might step in and willingly and lovingly offer more of that. That's true. And it's also true on the other side that if he would show, that he takes initiative and he wants to protect her and provide for her and make her happy, then she could let go and she would be softer and more receptive and less bossy. The problem, he says, is that both sides think that the other person should change first. Both sides, and it's a real thing. It's not just because people are stubborn. Both sides are burned out. Both sides are hurt. Both sides are exhausted. Both sides have tried in a million ways, right? Okay. Okay. הדרך היחידה לשבור את הכישוף היא שכל צד יעבוד על תיקון עצמו. He says there's only one way that this gets fixed. Every person just works on refining their side of the circle. Keep your eyes on your own paper, right? We as women, we take away all of the focus on the energy on what he's not giving and what he's not doing and what he's not changing and what he's not becoming and what he's refusing to do and what he never does and what he does that bugs me and what he doesn't do that bugs me. And we keep our focus on how do I become more open and trusting? How do I become more receptive? How do I learn to accept? How do I give up some control? How do I learn to soften and surrender? How do I learn to be comfortable with things when they're not exactly the way I want them to be, to give someone else room and space for their expression, right? Okay, and on the man's side, right, he begins to focus on, I don't like her tone and maybe she doesn't respect me or I don't feel respected, but I'm going to start showing up for her. I'm going to ask her what she needs, and I'm going to go get it. And I'm going to ask her, what can I do today to make her happy? And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to let her know that she can rely on me, and she doesn't have to hold everything by herself. And there's someone strong and capable and caring in the space. And I'm going to show her that through my actions and my words, right? Both together. Okay. ציפייה פסיבית לכך שבן הזוג יתקן את עצמו היא מתכון למרירות, קורבנות, כעס ותסכול. He says this formula that I can only be happy when if the other person changes the dance, creates an environment that leads to bitterness and feeling like a victim and a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. ורק מחזקת את דפוס היחסים ההרסני, and only feeds these destructive types of bonds and energy connections. על כל צד לשאול את עצמו, each party can ask themselves, היכן אני יכול להתחיל לאמץ את דפוס ההתנהגות התואם יותר את מגדרי? Where am I off balance? Where can I come more into balance, right? Because I can't change the other person. But where am I misaligned, and how can I address that? And it can be like a woman saying, you know, I'm overgiving in the house and I don't do any self-care. And so I'm bitter and angry about it. And I show up bitter and angry. So I'm going to maybe give up a certain standard that I want my house to look like. And that for me, this was like torture. And I started to go swimming every morning, first thing in the morning, right? To be there for my body and to give myself the strength, a healthy body and a strong body that I needed. And okay. המעיד לפחות ברמה מסוימת על ייעודיי ותפקידיי בעולם. It says, okay, so what's my mission in the world and what's my design? And for women, this is really shocking, okay? Women don't know this. I didn't know this when I was married. And unfortunately, I don't even know if I knew it when I was raising my children, that it was so important to me to have a beautiful order. And I don't mean beautiful, like I never had a lot of money ever, but I mean clean and orderly and seder, right? And you know, every night the homework and bathy time and meals and right. And that was so, so vital and important to me. And it still is, but I didn't realize that the greatest gift I could give my husband and my children was a happy self, a joyous self. I thought that what they needed more than me being happy was an immaculate home and nourishing food and clean laundry and order and schedules and right, all of the details of their life, the dentist appointments and the doctor appointments and that, right? And again, what we're talking about is balance, not either or. That's what we're going to get to when we see Leah and Rachel, right? The balance, how to blend Leah and Rachel, how to have the deep spiritual inspiration and joy and avodah, like joy in my avodat Hashem, right? And also be grounded and practical and getting stuff done, and right. And this is hard. And we've been working on this for thousands of years as women, right? And it becomes so wonderful to know that a really important part is that the whole family system needs joy. Joy helps the family system. It helps with the resentment. It helps with the imbalances. And when the mommy is feeling more joy, everybody feels more joy. In a real way. I don't mean self-indulgence, narcissism, even though we don't like to pathologize any parts. I mean real joy that the mommy is showing up and she feels strength and refreshed and she feels good about herself and she feels in some level of self-love and self-acceptance. And she feels to some degree that she's receiving support like that. Okay, and that she's giving herself support. Okay, if we can do this, Bezrat Hashem, then we'll see, right, that change will really start to happen, Bezrat Hashem. לראות את בן זוגו מתחבר יותר לתפקידו, הוא ומתדמה לדמות שהוא היה רוצה לראות. And it says, if we could take the pressure off each other that you're the problem, and if you change, our relationship will get better. If we can take that pressure off of each other, and also take that pressure off of ourselves from the place of shame and guilt, because shame and guilt never inspired anybody to improve. We think that's the lie. The lie is that we can shame ourselves into doing better. Ow, no, nobody wants to be around shame and blame. Even we don't want to get it from ourselves, right? We do it to ourselves, but does it help us change? Have you ever had a huge session where you've beaten yourself up and told yourself how lazy and stupid and ugly and fat you are, and then been like, well, now I'm ready to elevate? No, right? It doesn't happen like that. We have to be kind to ourselves also. And he says, shift the focus and start to place the focus back on ourself. And again, in a loving, compassionate way. That's the key here. The key is the self-compassion. How can I address my own imbalances, my own fears, my own worries, my own, how I'm showing up in this relationship and causing it to get stuck in polarized energies, right? Like, okay, again, I share really vulnerably, not because I love sharing my stories, because honestly, I actually feel shame, but I think it's important as because I'm older than everybody to share the wisdom that I've gained through my mistakes. So here's another one, like, I'm embarrassed to say that I was in several relationships where people wanted to end the relationship and I didn't want to receive that, right? I wanted the person in my life. So I thought I could push them or beg them or beg God or push God into letting me keep the connection. And again, I have so much compassion on that part of me, that didn't want to be rejected and didn't want to be abandoned and didn't want to feel that I wasn't good enough for love. And I have so much compassion on her. And at the same time, I didn't fully understand the energy dynamic that the more I'm going to chase, the more the person is going to run. And the more I think it's up to me to be better, to deserve their love, the more I'm putting that energy in, I'm reinforcing to them that I'm not good enough and I'm not worth your love and your time. So it's just, these are energies, and we're learning how to work with them. And also to remember that it's all hashgacha pratit. We learn what we learn, whether we learn it and we're 93 or whether we're 12. We learn it when Hashem decides, now we're ready for this elevation. Okay, last little paragraph. Wow, I'm really loving that we have 2 minutes and we have this little paragraph, and it's beautiful. Avraham v'Sarah madgimim zot be'atzmam. It says, right, Abraham and Sarah. So they're like the poster children for these shifts. Mi mehem hu harishon lehitaken. Who was the first one that said, I'm going to focus on my own tikkun and stop focusing on the other person's tikkun? Shtei hatshuvot efshariyot. So there's two possible answers. Lefi hapshat, if we look at pshat, or the simple meaning, but Torah shebechtav, in the written Torah, hazichrit be'ofya, which is what we actually call the masculine Torah, right? We call Torah shebechtav, or the written Torah, that's the masculine Torah. Torah shebe'al peh, or the oral Torah, is called the feminine Torah. So if we look at this from the lens of the masculine Torah, which we also call the written Torah, it says, Shinui shmo shel Avram mitrachesh lifnei shinui shma shel Sarai. It says that Avraham started changing first. That Avram became Avraham first, and then that helped the relationship to shift. But lefi hamidrash, but if you look at the feminine Torah, which is the oral Torah, which is medrash, and then it says, no, the feminine changed first. Ha-hey shetzurfa Avraham, that the hay that was given to Avraham, haytatzicha lehilakeach koda misarai, was first taken out from Sarai. In other words, Sarai changed first because she gave away, half of her yud, and she let go of control over half of the yud, and that enabled her to change, and then Avraham to change. Im shtei hatshuvot efshariyot, if both of these answers are possible, siman, it's a sign, shekol echad mibnei hazug, that each party, the masculine and the feminine, the man and the woman, יכול להתחיל את ההחלצות ממעגל הקסמים. And this is where we're end for today. By the way, we're coming back at 2:30 for Rabbi Nachman, but for this part of Sara today, right? He says it's proof that the healing and the change, it doesn't matter if it starts on the side of the masculine or the side of the feminine. I mean, it is going to matter later, because honestly, the Rebbe, for example, will say that the Geula happened then through the feminine, and it's going to happen again through the feminine, right? But by feminine, we don't just mean women, by the way, right? We mean how we receive. We mean the one who's on the receiving end. But okay, that's just a little bit off topic for now. But the point that he's trying to say is we start to feel hope again when we give up control and even a wish and a desire that we're going to change the other person, and then our relationship is going to be okay. Or even that we're going to overdo and overgive and overextend, and that's going to make the other person love us or come back or choose us or want us or heal the relationship. We give all of that up to Hashem with love and trust, and we offer all of that, and we say, the only real place that I can affect healing is in my own system. And as soon as I start to offer myself healing in my own system, who knows what will be? Everything else will shift. But I'm only responsible for my own tree. In other words, I can only affect change by working on my tree. And then actually those changes begin to affect everybody's tree. But I have to change the seder. I can't keep thinking that I have to change my parents or my children or my husband, and then I'll be okay and happy, right? If they would only behave the way I want them to, or give me what I want them to give me, or right, then I'll be happy. He says, then we might stay unhappy for a very long time, because the only place where Hashem gives us reshut is to bring and allow healing into our own system. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. Question.
Yeah. What if they don't change, right? We keep on fixing ourselves and changing ourselves, but isn't there a point where we have to say, I can change myself, keep on working on myself, but there's just some things that I don't deserve to be, certain ways I don't deserve to be treated, or certain things I shouldn't have to put up with.
Yeah, one of my most beautiful experiences and shocking experiences of my life was a very close friend of mine got divorced this last summer. And she was receiving Ye'utz, and I'm not sure if I want to say his name online, but from one of my Rebbeim who I deeply hold and deeply honor. And I was so delighted when he didn't come with that sort of classic, like, try harder to her. And the opposite, he was reflecting to her, okay, you've been married for 17 years and you've tried this and you've tried that and you've tried this and you've tried this and you've tried that and you've tried this. And I want to reflect to you that you have two choices right now. You can accept that this is the person that you married. Maybe one day they'll change, maybe they won't, right? And you can come to terms with, can you live with this the way that it is in these circumstances, and become okay with it and change yourself to be, in the ways you need to accommodate that this person is that way, or leave. But the third choice, which is waiting for him to change, we're taking that off the table. Right? Because that's not in our power. We're
Right.
powerless over that. And I couldn't believe it, because again, he's this big Rav, and who knows who's a tzaddik, right? But whatever, right? Certainly holding on a very elevated level of consciousness. And I'm so used to those super, super spiritual answers, which basically encourage a woman to always try harder and try again and give more. And yet he was not saying that. He was saying to her, right, take account. This is what your relationship is. This is what your marriage is. You can stay and try to change this or that or this in yourself, or you can leave.
Mhm.
And he actually encouraged her to leave. And I was sad, but I realized that he has more DOS than me, because he was saying to her, and I literally was pouring buckets, because she asked me to be at their Zoom meeting, and I was. So she and I were in one room, and he was on the other side of the screen on Zoom. And I was sobbing because I felt that someone was finally giving voice to the Shekhinah. And he was saying, a woman deserves to be treated kindly in the bedroom. A woman deserves to not feel afraid around her sexuality. A woman deserves, and this man right now cannot hold in those spaces. And he's not interested in getting help. He does not want to. And so you can accept that and figure out ways to protect yourself, or you can leave. And it was this beautiful example for me, because I'm such a diehard romantic that I always believed that if the woman gave more love and prayed harder and tried harder and was holier and sweeter and kinder and funnier and skinnier, of course, let's not leave that one out, right? And sexier and, oh my gosh, and just more perfect on every level, she could make him happy, and then they could have a happy marriage. That is an imbalance that
Mhm.
blocks the hashgacha pratis of our own healing and our own connection to light and our own permission to thrive and feel okay and safe and protected. And now, am I saying a woman should always leave? Of course, I'm not saying that. I'm saying in every individual story and in every moment of every individual story and marriage, he's saying that our avodah as the feminine is not the same as the avodah of the masculine. And we have a misconception that was bred into us. I really had this. I still have this. I'm learning this with my children, that when they're not happy with me, I try harder, I try harder, I try harder, I buy more, I give more, I cook more, I schlep more, I clean more, right? Until it was breaking me, like, because I kept feeling like I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. And now I'm in a shift of a movement of like, I'm so sad that they don't feel that they're getting what they need and that they want. But I also feel pretty okay that I really gave a lot. And now I'm going to shift the focus to healing my own system that maybe doesn't need all of that love and approval from them. And then we can connect because we want to, not because either one of us is stuck in feelings of, I didn't get what I needed and you don't love me and I'm not enough. And we don't want I don't want a relationship from those places anymore. I want a relationship because it feels yummy. Not every second does it feel yummy, right? But overall it feels yummy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anybody have a question? And by the way, okay, so you asked so beautifully, what if they don't change? Do we just keep changing ourselves? So you came on a little bit later, but one of the things that I love that Reva Emunah said is that we don't actually change as a woman. It's more that we allow ourselves to receive light. That's the change. We allow yumminess. We allow, like, as I once again invested my energy into trying to get somebody to love me that couldn't or wouldn't or didn't want to, or whatever the formula is, right? One of my big patterns is people who sporadically offer love and then they disappear and then they come back and offer. And for me, it's like breadcrumbs. It's like, when's the next crumb going to be thrown at me? And then I'm like a little dog, right? And Hashem is helping me to understand, and with the big bracha of Richard Schwartz, honestly, from IFS, because he said a line that freed my heart. And here it is. I hope it frees yours. And I bless you that it frees not only mine and yours and everyone listening to this recording. He freed my heart because he said like this: I offer my presence, I offer Shekhinah, I offer Das, I offer true self, that yummy energy of relationship when it feels creative and compassionate and fun and present and curious and calm and centered and connected, and all those yummy words, and healing. And even Richard Schwartz, my hero, the creator of IFS, said, I offer that, but only to beings that wish to receive it. Oh, who knew that sentence can be so important? The minute that someone is not open to receiving that from me and connecting and sharing that with me, I'm learning to say, it's not my job to convince you or to beg you or to make you stay or to prove to you how. It's the minute that the other being is not responding and saying, yes, me too, I want this delicious connection, then I withdraw that offer. And that's very feminine. And I allow protection around me. And it doesn't have to be a sign on my door saying don't knock ever. It could be. And it could be crocodiles and moats, right? Which I'm considering putting up. Right. But but it's the honoring of Shekhinah dwells inside of me. It's not from an arrogant place of like, you don't want me, well, who wants you? No, it's not that energy. It's an energy of I actually believe that connections should feel good. And good doesn't mean easy. Good means honoring and respectful and mutual. And I want time with him as much as he wants time with me. And right, I value him and he values me. And if it doesn't feel like that for me lately, then I'm like, peace out. Anybody else? Okay. Since you're here, and I don't know who Zoom user is because she's anonymous, she's hiding behind her black screen. For all I know, it could be a guy, it could be Elmo, I don't know. Could you please give us a bracha, a tefillah? Anything could be the simplest one line, but really from your authentic heart of something that you heard that opened or healed or touched something within you that you would like to bless yourself and all of us with.
Okay. I love that line you said from Richard Schwartz, and I loved everything you said, but can you repeat it? And then I'll say bracha. The last one.
The peace out. Yeah.
About offering our love to the people who.
Yeah, I was just thinking to add a line to it that it's very precious to share our Shekhinah life force with another Shekhinah life force. And it should feel like that it's a swoot, that it's a wonder, that it's a gift, that it's a miracle. Is there work? Yes. But the same way there's work that if you have a beautiful diamond ring, every once in a while you have to clean it and polish, like you have to, you have to care for it. But it's not like every single day, all it is this crushing work, right? And I think that's something that's being healed in me, and I believe is being healed in all of the wounded feminine, right? Because we're moving into the healed feminine, the integrated feminine, is this idea of, number one, I can make somebody love me. I can make somebody choose me. I can make somebody see me if I'm just more, if I'm just more pretty and more young and more sexy and more holy and more good and more of a Beis Yaakov girl or less of a Beis, like, believe me, I've worn every single one of these masks, right? There's no stone unturned in my search for what would make me enough to be loved and enough for someone to want to connect with me and partner with me and journey through life together. And I know both of I know all the extremes. I know overextending and I know over isolation. I've tried every trick in the book, right? Over giving, not giving, hard to get, the too present, not present, but not real presence. That's how it says when in Yeshayahu that as Mashiach is being revealed within each one of us and between us, that the world will be filled with Da'at Hashem. Da'at is the secret of beautiful connection. Da'at is to experience connection as something beautiful, not overly scary, because it has the power to crush me, and I'm not overly dependent upon it because I feel that I have no worth without it, right? All these extremes, right? That draw me into imbalanced connection, right? So first and foremost, I'm asking Hashem to help me repair the connections from me to me, right? Between Das, which is like my true elevated self. I might call it like my most healthy feminine, to all my own wounded children inside, right? My own parts. And part of that is sticking up for her in the most loving way, so that, again, what Richard Shorts said, I offer the Shekhinah in me, but I only offer it to people who are going to be kind to it and treat it well, and honor her, and want that connection and value that connection. And I've learned that, and Richard Schwartz is the one who gave me permission to do this, I am allowed to withdraw that energy if it's not being met. And not from a place of bitterness or anger or revenge, from a place of like, thank you, Hashem, for showing me that this is not true home for me. And I will back out the door, and I will continue to build true home within myself and hope to connect it in those spaces of true home outside of me with others. But I'm no longer going to seek where I will not find. Right? Hit the rock. Try to get someone to love me who can't or doesn't want to or is incapable, or who cares what the reason is. If it's not being freely offered, I bow to that and I accept it.
Thank you.
All right, lovies, I'm gonna eat something and come back at 2:30. Please stay tuned for more programming from your sponsor, Shekhinah.com. Okay. Bye,
Thank you,
lovies.
Reva.